Yo, what's up? Welcome back to another episode of the SWAS. Continuing on with college football week 5. We're in week 5 already. Got a really nice Big 12 matchup here. Oklahoma State, Kansas State. Both teams coming off disappointing week 4s. Who's going to bounce back? Let's talk about it.
Welcome to the SWAS. The SWAS. SWAS. Hey, get the SWAS.
All right, like I said, we got the Pokes on the road in Kansas State here. Kansas State laying 6 now. Was at 5.5. It's up to 6. I even see a 6.5. Looks like on FanDuel at the time of recording. Total sitting at 54.5 pretty much across the board here. So let's get into this one, and we'll start with some head-to-head history. Oklahoma State has won 4 of the last 5 matchups against Kansas State, but Kansas State's been covering. Kansas State 3-2 against the spread in their last 5. In fact, Kansas State has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8-3 against the spread in their last 11 matchups against Oklahoma State, but we're not really in. Oh, and also 6 straight unders here. If you look at the graphics, 6 straight unders between these two teams. But we're not really interested in previous matchups. We want to talk about this matchup, and we'll start with the fact that both these teams coming off disappointing losses. Like I said, I mean, Kansas State 38-9 is wild. Now, that final score is very deceiving, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Oklahoma State, you would think Cam Rising doesn't play in the game, that Oklahoma State's able to get this win at home. Wasn't the case. Couldn't stop the Utah rushing attack, and we'll talk about that in a minute as well. Let's start with the Oklahoma State offense. Surprisingly pass happy. 5th in the country in pass frequency so far this season. It's crazy. They have the same pass frequency as Colorado. And the reason that's so shocking, if you don't follow college football, Oklahoma State's running back was a Heisman hopeful this year. I mean, I shouldn't say was. He still is. He didn't really get hot till the second half of last year as well, so we shouldn't be writing him out of the Heisman conversation. But, I mean, this team has been about Alan Bowman, not about Ollie Gordon, at least so far in the season. Oklahoma State's offense is sitting at 37th in OFEI, which isn't terrible, but look at the rushing numbers. 104th in the country in yards per carry, 128th. In rushing success rate. That's so crazy. They're rated 120th in effective rush. Passing numbers look okay. 51st in yards per pass attempt, 57th in passing success rate, 19th in effective pass. Alan Bowman on the season averaging 8.8 yards per pass attempt, 9 touchdowns, 2 picks. QB rating looks pretty good. But here's the thing. Even Alan Bowman didn't show up last week against Utah, which was the best defense he's seen so far. 16 of 33, 206 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks. They actually benched him in the third quarter. So even the passing attack failed Oklahoma State last week. And now they're matched up against Kansas State. And this defense, I've been saying it since the offseason, this defense is no joke. Kansas State under Chris Kleiman's kind of branded as this run and gun, 40-35 final score. Offense only makes 0 stops, 1 billion points scored in the game. That's not how this year's Kansas State team is built. In fact, this defense is probably the strength of the team. Well, actually, they have a really good rushing attack too. But their defense, they're actually rated 1st in effective rush on defense. 1st, 20th in run defense success rate, 40th in yards per carry allowed. Pass defense leaves a little bit to be desired, but no question, Kansas State's defensive front is good this year and needs to be respected. Look at these numbers here. Offensive lines are not generating push against this Kansas State defensive front. They're 12th in defensive line yards, 7th in stuff rate. This is a very tough defense to run the ball on. And like we already pointed out, Oklahoma State really struggling to get Ollie Gordon in the run game going. Look at the Oklahoma State offensive line numbers. They're really struggling to create space for Ollie Gordon here. So this matchup against Kansas State, I don't expect anything to change. I mean, I do think Ollie Gordon will get going at some point this season, but against Kansas State, I don't think that's the spot. But here's the thing. Look at the other half of this graphic. Oklahoma State's offensive line, we can poke holes in their ability to create space in the run game. They've actually been great in pass protection. And the reason I'm pointing that out, the pass rush, let's pull up Kansas State's defensive line numbers again. It's been an important part of Kansas State's defense so far. They're 14th in sack rate, 1st in pressure rate. I don't know if they're going to be able to generate the same type of pressure against this Oklahoma State team. That offensive line has done a good job keeping Alan Bowman safe in the pocket. And even if they are able to generate pressure, Alan Bowman's been surprisingly incredible handling pressure so far this season. A+ across the board. He's been great when pressured. So that Kansas State pass rush that's been such a huge factor for them this year, I don't necessarily love the spot for him here. I mean, Alan Bowman coming off his first bad game of the season, I think he bounces back. Not to mention, Kansas State runs a lot of man coverage. They're 47th in the country in man coverage frequency. Alan Bowman, very good throwing the ball against man coverage this year, pretty much top 40 across the board. So like I said, I expect Alan Bowman to bounce back. I think he has a nice game throwing the ball against Kansas State. But as far as Ollie Gordon running the football, I think his struggles are going to continue here. That Kansas State defensive front is good. He's got 258 yards, 3.5 yards per carry on the season. I expect him to struggle again. It's crazy when you compare it to his numbers last year. He was averaging over 6 yards a carry, 1,700 yards. But something I want to point out, and I said this earlier, through 4 games last year, he only had 230 yards rushing. So he actually has more rushing yards this year through 4 games than he did last year. The concerning part, they've given him twice the volume, 73 carries compared to 37. So the efficiency numbers aren't there. But like I keep saying, Ollie Gordon caught fire about this point in the season last year, week 5. I actually think it was the Kansas State game, if I'm being honest, that primetime game. Oh, no. Bowman went off against Kansas State. In fact, we're going to add that to the video. I don't have the numbers in front of me. Bowman went off throwing the ball against Kansas State on primetime last year, too. So we already know Bowman's capable of cooking on this Kansas State defense. So that's the angle I like. As far as the Oklahoma State offense, I think Bowman's able to have a very efficient day throwing the football.
Correction. Right after I got done recording that, I looked. So Bowman didn't go off against Kansas State last year. They won the game. I should know. I had Kansas State minus 10.5 in that. So I lost my bet terribly. But Bowman didn't really go off. So I was remembering that incorrectly. I'll put the stats of what really happened on the screen.
But what about the other side? We got the Kansas State offense, very run dependent this year. Avery Johnson, much different quarterback than Will Howard was. They're 28th in run frequency on the season. They've been good as hell at it. They got 2 really good backs. They got Avery Johnson, who could also use his legs. They're 14th in the country in yards per carry, 27th in rushing success rate, 2nd in effective rush. Passing numbers don't look great, and I think Avery Johnson as a passer still needs to develop. He's definitely not the passer that Will Howard was or is. Will Howard still playing? So definitely not the passer that Will Howard is. He threw a couple picks against BYU, and I want to bring up the numbers from the BYU game, actually, because I didn't watch much of this game at all. I had it on one of the small TVs. I didn't have a bet in this game, so I wasn't paying a ton of attention to it. I just saw they were getting their ass beat. These numbers were shocking. 367 total yards to 241, and they got beat by 30 points. Obviously, turnovers are an issue here. They won a time of possession battle. So, I mean, if Avery Johnson doesn't throw the picks, he threw 2 picks, 78.3 passer rating. If Avery Johnson protects the football, that game should have been much closer than it was. When we pull up Avery Johnson's passing numbers on the season, I mean, down to 6.6 yards per attempt, 6 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. It's crazy because this exact graphic a week ago looked pretty good. This one really bad game against BYU threw his whole season off. We know he's capable of being a somewhat efficient passer, but as a whole, this Kansas State offense, it rides the run game. The backbone of this offense is the run game. So the question is, can Oklahoma State stop the run? I mean, that's the main question on this side of the ball. And I really don't know, to be honest. I mean, they are sitting at 23rd in DFEI, 80th in yards per carry allowed. They are sitting at 32nd in effective rush, so some advanced metrics indicate that they might be a decent run defense. But if you pull up their defensive line numbers, 83rd in line yards, 80th in stuff rate, 99th in run defense rank. We saw what Utah did. I mean, Cam Rising wasn't playing. I think most of us was like, oh, Oklahoma State can definitely take this one. They couldn't stop Utah from running the ball. 250 yards, 4.9 yards per carry. And Kansas State's rushing attack is every bit as good as Utah's. I mean, it might even be better, more dynamic with better weapons. Even in their blowout loss on the road in BYU, they were still running the ball. 228 yards, 5.3 yards per carry. It's tough to make a case for Oklahoma State stopping the Kansas State rushing attack. I will say Oklahoma State, they've rebounded a little bit defensively since the Arkansas game. They got cooked by Arkansas, but last 2 games, the yards per play, 5.3, down from 6.5 in the first 2 games. It's not that I think Oklahoma State's defense is good, but I think it's a little bit better than they're perceived to be right now. That Arkansas game is kind of giving them a bad rep. So I think this Oklahoma State defense is okay. Can they stop Kansas State's rushing attack? Probably not. So where does that leave us in terms of placing a bet? Well, plain and simple, this number feels way too high to me. 6.5 I can get? 6.5. I mean, I think this number should be at 3.5. I do understand why Kansas State is favored by more than a field goal, but I like Bowman to bounce back. Maybe Ollie Gordon isn't able to get going. I don't think he will be, but I like Bowman to bounce back, throwing the ball. And we're talking about laying almost a touchdown, 6.5 points with an offense that's going to be very run dependent, a quarterback I don't really trust as a thrower. No way. It'll only be Oklahoma State for me here. The reason I haven't bet it, this number was at 5.5. Now it's 6. Now I see a 6.5. Why not hold out and see if we can get a 7? I mean, I very, very seriously doubt they're going to sell any Oklahoma State +7 tickets, but I don't know. Maybe timing the market is a whole nother conversation. Maybe I should grab an Oklahoma State +6.5. Maybe I should wait it out and try to get a 7. I don't know. I'll be on Oklahoma State. Haven't bet it yet. I would love an Oklahoma State +7. I'll hammer the shit out of an Oklahoma State +7. But for this video, I'll say give me that 6.5 on FanDuel.
So scratch that. I should have taken that 6.5 when I saw it, because right after I finished recording, it actually dropped. It's at 5.5 on most books. I even see 5s. I found 1 6 left and took it. So I'm in on Oklahoma State +6. Not a huge bet, but I think this is the right side here. Oklahoma State +6.
If you want to see all the bets I currently have open, head over to KyleKirms.com and click on Open Bets. You'll see all mine as well as everyone on the staff here. Also, if you sign up for Sauce Network Plus, you get access to the Discord, and you can participate in the weekly betting league. $150 cash, and one of these trophies go to the winner every single week. Actually, the finals for last week is tonight for the 2 Monday Night Football games. So if you're interested in any of that, head over to KyleKirms.com and sign up. Live shows, college football Saturday, 10 a.m. Eastern time. We'll be live for 2 hours. We go through almost every single game on the board. We did 30 last Saturday. We go through as many as we can. If you're able to make it, would love to see in the comments. NFL live show, 11 a.m. to kickoff. So 11 a.m. up to kickoff on Sundays. So yeah, hope to see you there. Let's have ourselves a nice college football week 5. Coming off a really strong weekend for me. Hopefully that keeps rolling. Remember to bet responsibly, and I'll talk to you in the Discord.